Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, Iowa soccer supporters. I'm Ben Brackett, co-host of Soccer Talk here with my pal Blake Sievers. What's up, Sieves?
Man, this is funny for all of our YouTube
Am I close enough?
viewers. Like you're right, taking up the whole screen, but we're kind of getting in the habit of these remote pods, aren't we?
Are you saying I've got a big head?
It looks like that on the YouTube.
I'm just trying to get close to the microphone. So,
Those that aren't watching on YouTube are probably wondering what's going on.
great plug, Sieves. Hit up the YouTube. What are the things we're going to plug today? So we've got a cool chat today. We're excited to have Craig Winger and Dan Cataldi in the house together to talk about the sort of transition of the Iowa Soccer League within Iowa Soccer Association. But what are we plugging today, Steve? Other than that, the exciting.
We got two big things. So we had our first U5 pre-K K clinic last Saturday out at Waterworks Park by the Shelter House.
It was a blast.
We were it was a good problem, but we had quite a few kids.
We did. It was funny because I got the text like the day before. Hey, what do you have going Saturday morning? And, my dog doesn't play soccer, but all these kids seem to. So my help was needed.
Yeah, I mean, big credit to Nikki Zornovich. He's kind of spearheading that. But yeah, we had 20 plus odd kids, I think, and 3, 4s, 5s, 6s. So if you have anybody that young wants to get a couple 2-year-olds introduced to soccer, come Waterworks Park, Shelter House. There's that big open field.
We only had one person leave early, and that was Elise White, Elise Reed, and her kid. But hopefully she'll be back. But yeah, anyway, it was fun. We did good stuff.
Yeah, and it was cold. Like those kids were warriors.
Absolutely. We'll be back again this weekend, and then I don't know.
Big day Saturday.
I was gonna say this is Saturday is gonna be all kick it forward. What are we? The afternoon's gonna kind of I don't know. Depends on who you are. It's not gonna be the greatest afternoon.
So we got a heat-a-thon with the co-host here, Ben Brackett, Tanner Kraus, Come and Go, Matt Stayhag, Kick It Forward, and we did Darwin Solace of La Buena and Des Moines. Yeah, so details, Ben.
Yeah, well, so it's like basically the Emenecker Challenge that we did 2 years ago, and we were so close to the championship there in conjunction with the Drake Relays. So this year we're.
As you said though,
so close.
Serious tactics. Yeah, there's dodgy claims on that 2 years ago.
So we're working really hard this year to see if we can raise some money. I think we're going to be up against a tough number to hit, but we're gonna do it if possible. And so this year, because of COVID protocol, everybody gets to eat their own sandwich, which as an eater I appreciate significantly. But anyway, so we've already done Darwin eating, and he was incredible.
Crushed it.
4
minutes, as much of the mini Emeneckers you can eat is the challenge.
Yeah. If you're asking Darwin, the answer is most of it. So anyway, let's
come down to Berlin Mini Pitch Saturday 4:30 tomorrow.
Absolutely. And so then let's transition over to our interview with Craig and Dan from Iowa Soccer Association. We'll chat a little bit about the old ISL transition.
All right. We got a couple of podcast pros in the house tonight. Dan Cataldi and Craig Winger. How are you guys doing today?
Fantastic.
Very good. Thanks for having us back.
Yeah. So we don't have a first question for you. So I don't know, what have you guys been up to recently? Anything good?
Just, prepping for the season, running my kids' places. It's nice to get back in that routine of, actual activities at night. So that's been basically my life is work and kids, it feels like.
Same here. Just, again, season kicks off for majority of our membership this weekend. So it's been a busy few weeks trying to get the schedule stabilized and just excited to get kids back out to the field. I think we have over 300 games taking place this weekend across the state. So hopefully it's sunny and beautiful.
As it rains outside right now. Well, so thanks again for joining us today. Why don't you just kind of, obviously you're back continue the conversation around the, kind of what the ISL is going to look like. So why don't you just, kind of tell us what the plan is at this point? No, it's, everybody's aware that the CDL has decided to form their own deal. And I think now the question is simply, okay, what's next for the rest of us? So maybe, I know there's a process. So why don't you just give us an idea of what's going to happen over the next, whatever it is, or what's happened or is happening,
Sure.
etc.
I'll kick it off and let Craig talk a little bit more too. Essentially, when we started these conversations, we plan to come for essentially 3 sessions with you guys to talk about specific topics. And today was really the idea that we could end it with anything that's come up from your listeners, if they've, put in some questions. And obviously, since the last time we met, the CDL did announce that they were going to move their league to US Club Soccer. So it hasn't changed a lot, frankly, of what we're planning to do at Iowa Soccer. We still intend to do the same things we've been doing. Last time I was here, we talked about the process with a consultant that we want to engage. Really, we're focusing on kind of engagement, equity, things like that, as we look at working with our clubs, those that are staying with Iowa Soccer, and not, still willing to talk to those that are leaving to get their perspective as well. But we're focusing on understanding, it's a pivotal time right now in soccer. The environment changes over years, and so we need to, evolve with that. So really important to talk to our clubs and understand what it is, what their priorities are. It's really a matter of prioritizing, kind of what they want, what they need. So we're in the beginning stages of that to really engage and understand, so that we can develop some long-term plans and some short-term plans, both as we look towards the fall, really the summer with tryout season, and then into the fall and beyond, so that we know we can, if we need to build things up a whole different way, we're willing to do that. If we need to tweak things slightly, we're ready to do that as well. But we really just want to make sure we understand where we need to play a role in the evolution of soccer in Iowa. Our goal is still to give kids the best experience they can get playing for any of our community clubs, whether they're playing on the recreational side or whether they're playing in state cup. We want to make sure kids just are having a good time, and so doing our part to make sure we're providing those opportunities.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think it's just been exciting to have conversations with our membership. In working with a third party, those interviews and engagements will kick off as early as next week. So I know our clubs are excited to just talk about what the league and the landscape can be for soccer. All of our members have unique challenges. So, we're going to try to gather that feedback from all those clubs, and then, come back and talk about it and make decisions that are good for soccer across the entire state. So.
Can you guys lay out kind of how that process looks, as far as, I don't know if you want to tell everybody who the consultant is and a little bit about that background, but then is it literally calling clubs and just, like you said, getting the feedback, any specific kind of questions, or is it kind of an open book? How does that process play out?
Sure, I can talk about the consultant and how we chose this group, and let Craig talk. He's been working on the process. So the consultant group that we've hired is called The Collective. It's run by a gentleman named Brad Stinson. They're out of Nashville. Brad has a long history in soccer, having played at high levels. So experienced with soccer and knows the culture and knows the terminology. He also has done a lot of consulting work, his firm, with soccer organizations, from the MLS all the way down to local clubs that they've worked with. They've worked with other state associations. They've worked with USU Soccer. And I had the opportunity to work with him as part of a USU Soccer leadership endeavor. And I've spoken to several other states that have engaged his services to do different things. Not always exactly what we're doing here. This is, with trying to engage our membership, but everybody's spoken very highly and very positively about their experience and kind of what he's been able to deliver in his team. And they work outside of soccer too. They're a general, they do a lot of kind of business consultation. So it's not just soccer, but certainly the fact that he's got experience within the sport, as a player, as, working with the different levels from club to national, from recreational to MLS. He's currently consulting with the new MLS team in Nashville, for instance. We thought that really gave him an advantage to come in and kind of hit the ground running. And I think Craig will attest to the fact that in some of our early conversations, just the understanding of a lot of the general concepts really put us well ahead of where we would be with somebody that may not know the industry as well, to really be able to kind of move this along in a much quicker pace than it might take just to get somebody acclimated. So that's how we landed on Brad and the collective and brought them on board, and then started having conversations with them right after we sent that initial letter, that said this was our intention, was to engage a consultant and work with our clubs to look at our league and make sure we're providing a product that meets the needs of our members today. So that brought us to kind of the process of starting, and I'll let Craig talk about where we've been and the process to get us to where we're about to launch, kind of outward facing to the clubs.
Yeah, it's been a fun month, or probably 5 or 6 weeks with Brad and his team. We've met with him several times. Jenny Wood from our office has been helpful in just kind of sharing the history from before my era. We've talked about kind of the transition of the league from Ted to Lisa to myself. But we've been working with them and trying to share the history, share some of the challenges related to the league, related to scheduling, and just kind of bouncing ideas off of Brad. And then Jordan is another one from his team that's been helping us. And they've asked a lot of good questions, a lot of similar feedback to what we're getting from our membership. It's exciting because they've been working in other states, and some of the trends and challenges that we're dealing with in Iowa, it's not unique to the landscape. Some of these things are taking place, in other states in the country. So they're coming in with a little bit of experience of how they've managed this in other states, and it's been helpful to us. And I mean, I think we're excited to get the feedback from the member clubs, and they're really excited to introduce themselves and to kind of have that third party. I mean, we get feedback from all clubs all the time, but it'll be good to have an outside party come in, kind of solicit that feedback and help organize, some of the feedback and notes, and talk about different ways we can move forward. Because as Dan mentioned, I mean, with the membership and with soccer in general coming out of this pandemic, I think we all need to really get excited about what soccer can look like moving forward, knowing that it could look very different from what we've done in the past. So just excited to kick that off, and we'll actually be making calls later today to make those introductions, and clubs will be interviewing with Brad and his team as early as next week. And we expect, this will probably play out over the next probably month or two, but excited to just get that feedback and start thinking about the future.
How many clubs are you going to end up having to interview through that process?
So we're starting with a list of about 30 to 40 clubs. We really want everybody who's been engaged in ISL. The reality is, this started based around the state league. And in most cases, it evolved around, a lot of our planning has evolved around those clubs with 4 or more teams in the state league. The reality of this project is the decisions that we make in the state league may have, may impact our recreational league. So we're planning to really include as many clubs as we can, to make sure we're getting that feedback. I think right now our list is around 30 clubs. Some of those clubs are clubs that were part of the CDL that we're interested in just talking about the soccer landscape in Iowa as well. So that's been something we've been committed to from the beginning, is anybody that wants to talk about this, we want to get that feedback and try to put the best product forward for everyone in Iowa.
So I heard, Dan, you mentioned the term community club earlier, and then, so we're just talking about, 30, 40 clubs, but obviously there are more clubs beyond those that are probably even more so to that definition of community club. But maybe just talk a little bit about, because this is a newer term that's come up, I think as probably a result of this whole process. I think I know what it means, but I'd rather hear what you guys, your term, and then maybe just kind of like what then, if I'm like just a parent and I'm saying, okay, well, these are community clubs, what's the difference between that and whatever the CDL is? Like, how is that then? And I know that you don't necessarily know where you're going, but I'm just posing the question.
Yeah, I don't I don't think we've necessarily defined what exactly a community club is. And I think it's, I think most clubs start off in some sort of a community environment. And I think, when I talk about community clubs, we're thinking, I think personally more of clubs that are tied to a particular area. Like they're not just part of, they're not just there to play soccer, that they have more of a kind of an investment in the local community. They're tied, when you say this city, you think of this soccer club or the other way around. They're not necessarily, but not exclusively, they're not necessarily interested in huge growth. They really focus on kind of, what's going on in their community. You see this especially in small town Iowa, throughout. You see it in Des Moines Metro as well, and you see it in Cedar Rapids area and all the other kind of more urban areas. But it's definitely pronounced, and when you go to a town like, let's say Winterset, that club really is tied to Winterset. It's kind of part of the community. And that's kind of what I think of as community club is kind of a lot of times they have a different, not a different focus, but, different ways of getting there, and that they just want to be a part of their community. They're not trying to separate themselves from it. And there's, nothing right or wrong with any of those things, but it is a term that's kind of come a vogue lately. And, we have members going forward after the CDL leaves that will be community clubs, and we have members that won't necessarily be community clubs. And so neither one is right or wrong. They're just different types of things. And I think one of the areas we've recognized that we believe will come out of all this is we need to pay more attention to the different types of clubs, and making sure that we're not so focused on our competitive leagues that we aren't supporting the recreational players. That's still the vast majority of players in this state. And so making sure we're providing the resources and support to for those clubs, whether they play in our league or whether they're playing in a different recreational league. We want to make sure we're providing them something that's beneficial.
Yeah, I think I would just add the community clubs have been really important to the leagues. I think last time we talked about trying to make the state smaller by trying to connect certain areas like Western Iowa and Central Iowa. If you can identify those community clubs in between, it helps the leagues, it helps those players, it helps us get better matchups. Like Dan said, I think a lot of clubs start with that community, trying to provide the members of the community a good soccer experience. But I mean, all of our community clubs really try to put the best product out there, and that's where we need to do a better job of supporting all of our clubs, big or small, to help that experience. And ultimately, we can only grow the game by helping all of our clubs. Whether it's community club or larger. We need to focus on making them the best that they can be to continue to grow the game. And relating it back to the league is when we fill in some of those areas between kind of the outliers, we help everyone in the state of Iowa. And, the conversations we're having now is the state and beyond, and trying to do what's best for all of our membership, no matter where they're located.
And I think it's not, or at least it's fair to say this issue is not one that is Iowa specific. I mean, this is a nationwide discussion that has been going on at multiple different levels, different states too. So I think just with the choice of the consultant there, his knowledge and whatnot, that's just from an outsider, just an opinion. Like hopefully that's super beneficial to everybody, that he's seen what has worked, what doesn't, and then obviously can kind of narrow it down to Iowa and our different little challenges that we have that many other states may not have. Talk about, is there the state of Iowa, the soccer, the game in Iowa has not really, at least since our time, I don't think hasn't had a chance to really like actually be analyzed, be looked at, and have any kind of quote drastic change the past 30 years. So I think does that excite may not be the right word, but does that kind of intrigue you guys a little bit to be able to?
I think excite could work.
Okay, but just I mean, we're gonna be able to. There's gonna be some changes, and it maybe is an exciting time in the game that hasn't happened in 30 plus years. That kind of to be looked at to keep improving on that.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. We look at this as a great opportunity. We're coming out of COVID, which was extraordinarily hard, for every club in the state to get through, not just the state, obviously, but throughout the country. I mean, there's places in this country that still aren't playing soccer again. Um, able to get through that, see our membership, it declined, but not decline as significantly as it did other places in the country, and overall in youth sports. So, and we're seeing a real rebound in some of our clubs this spring, where kids that didn't play in the fall, particularly on the rec side, are coming back and playing this spring. So, so we're hoping we can see that bounce back. And with it, we look at this all as an opportunity. We had to do some things differently last year during COVID. There was no option. And so we know changes, people can accept change and things can move forward. I mean, we had to change our premier events, State Cup and President's Cup, and separate them. That was something we talked about doing for a long time, but we were our hand was forced because we wanted to make sure we gave every team a chance to compete without having to miss it because they had, we're in a COVID quarantine. So, coming out of this, as the CDL clubs have made their decision, and our other clubs have really been, many of our other clubs have really been invigorated by the opportunities they see now for their clubs. We really look at it as just an opportunity to do something different. And maybe, I've said it all along, it may not be very different. It may be we're doing the right things, but at least we're going to know really well as to we're on the right track. So yeah, I'd say it's exciting. It's going to be a really busy next 4 or 5 months as we analyze all this, but certainly, the topics that have been brought up on this pod, repeatedly, things like promotion, relegation, a premier division, for the top 8 or 10 teams that play into State Cup, all those things are potential outcomes. Certainly we have no idea. We're prepared, that those could or could not happen. But we're also really excited about the opportunity to grow. We think now is a chance to capitalize and grow the game. Craig mentioned it, by connecting those communities, by really growing the recreational game throughout the state, from the middle of Des Moines to the most rural areas of the state. So all that opportunity we are given now is something we have to make sure we do a good job as a state association, with the support of our membership, to capitalize on improving the products and growing the game.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're excited about the opportunity for change. There's a lot of good conversations there. And I think for us, the things that go on behind the scenes, from the tools that we use, the scheduling, the risk management, all the things that go into the leagues to provide a good experience, those will remain relatively consistent. We're going to continue to try to improve those. But the league itself and the structure and the competitions and a lot of things that we've discussed, on the last couple of pods and the ones before that, we know that the leagues, especially the state league specifically, is not really where we've ever wanted it to be. But a lot of those decisions were based on some of the operational challenges for some of our clubs. And some of those decisions that we've made, it was always you'd make a decision that benefits some clubs and it hurt other clubs. And I think moving forward, I'm excited to see if there's room to make decisions based on the experience and the players before some of those operational challenges. And who knows, we might go through this and say, the league, it's not perfect, but it's the best league based on what everybody's looking for, everybody's challenges. And at the end of the day, right now, our league is focused on just getting kids out on the field to play and compete. And maybe that's the highest priority over some of these other things. But being involved in the league for 6 years and not seeing us move the league enough, I think this is an exciting opportunity for someone else to come in, get that feedback and say, hey, I understand the challenges here, but the opportunity is to go from point A to point B. And then working with our membership, who I think, our membership, just like everyone else, they're excited for change. They want to see this move forward, and hopefully we'll be able to move it forward quicker than we have in the past.
I think that's one thing that not just ISA, but businesses in general, organizations as well, don't go out and seek outside input on somewhat of a frequent basis. I'm just thinking, the place I work, Ben, your place, it's always, you don't have to agree or disagree, but it's always good to hear somebody from outside that's not tied, that's unbiased, just looking in and saying, hey, here's what has worked throughout the country. And I'm sure there's conversations at the US YSA level, but I don't know. That's super intriguing for me to be able to hear and see what they say.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we did it is we've heard from everybody over and over again, and some voices are louder and some voices are quieter. And so one of the great things the consultant can do is equalize those voices. Should everybody have an identical equal voice? No, just like at our AGM, you vote based on your, the size of your membership. So there is some, it's everybody's voice isn't going to be 100% equal, but they're at least going to be equalized. And we want to get an equitable solution that really benefits our clubs. The only way we can do that is through engagement, true engagement. But it can't be just us because we come to it with biases, whether we believe it or not, too. It's that unconscious bias of how we, secretly want things to go, or not secretly, but how we, deep down, how they were when I was a kid growing up in Kansas City. I think back to that and think, why can't that work here? Well, there's reasons, but it's going to, give me that bias. So this outside opinion, is going to give us, the other things can do is allow us to really, look at our staff and reprioritize how we're doing things and what we're investing our time on. We know growth is important for the game. We know if we build a bigger recreational base, it's going to improve the competitive game. It's just, that's how it works. The more you have to choose from, eventually the top of the pyramid is stronger as well. So we know we need to do a better job of that. And that's, something that we need to figure out how to reallocate our staff time to be able to go, whether it's into the metro areas or into the rural areas, and find new clubs or find those pockets of kids and get them engaged so that they have a more organized opportunity. So the kids that turn out to be talented have that opportunity to develop as well. So that's, the engagement and the reprioritization of our staff time is really with that third party kind of giving us that guidance, is really where we're excited to go.
Do you have any thoughts on like how you actually, like, boots on the ground, physically grow the game to places where you're not? I'm just more curious, like, what's the actual, like, I remember a really, really long time ago, going like to a clinic with Ian Bradley when he was probably in a similar position, trying to, like, and I don't know where we went, but it was somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and we coached a little group of kids, and like that was the outreach that we did. I don't know how effective it was or wasn't. I'm just curious, like, what kinds of things are you thinking about? Because if the feedback is, well, you can go grow the game, like, you're still gonna have to figure it out a little bit. So, like, what are some thoughts? I surely don't have the golden goose here, but
Yeah, I'll start and I'll let Craig through, because I know he's got some concrete examples probably that he's seen. But I think first and foremost, it's the commitment to it. It's making sure we have somebody who's the point person to stay on top of all this. Because I think, there's so many, when you're trying to grow the game, there's so many factors in that, with a local community that wants to start a club. But we know there's tons of communities where there's a lot of kids playing. I just had a conversation yesterday with somebody that, we're going to meet over the summer because she has about 120 kids that they go and play things like Iowa games, but they don't really have any other organized opportunities, and they're really interested. So it's the having somebody committed to make sure we're staying on top of it. And it's the focus and just the investment in the time from our end to make sure we help them get through that process, really thoroughly. Like I said, I think most of the communities have those groups of kids. And so it's just a matter of us getting in there, sharing, the value of joining an organized kind of statewide and nationwide movement, and the opportunities that exist for the kids that are engaged, is the most critical. If we can't do that, and really invest in that time-wise, then then we're just saying words to say them. So really putting that as a focus on our team at Iowa Soccer with the support of our member clubs. And I think that's important too, is that it can't just be those of us, the 9 of us that are full-time at Iowa Soccer. We need the help of our clubs, because it's better for them when there's more local clubs. And I use Northwest Iowa as an example all the time, because I've had this conversation with many of them up there. We know there's a lot of cities up there where kids are playing soccer, but they're not part of the organized league. So having our clubs up in that area, in Spencer, for instance, working to, work with their neighbors as well to also join Iowa Soccer to help us build a product in Northwest Iowa that's appealing, to bring others in. So I'd say all of that is kind of key, the number one key. Now there's some specific things we can do, in communities, and, things that have worked before. And I mean, we've added new clubs in the last few years. So we know there's things we can do, but I think that's the key. Craig?
Yeah, I think we're excited to be more intentional about doing that. I mean, I've been here for 6 years, and my first year or two when I was really focused on the league, I personally spent a little bit more time, whether it was with, Bradley or Harold or someone else. I mean, we were taking field trips regularly to go talk to those communities and find out what's going on. And I mean, the reality based on what I'm seeing and coming from, a community-based club that expanded into a larger club, I would say for every player that we know that's playing, there's probably 2 more players out there playing soccer. And then sometimes those kids are playing a lot more soccer than the kids that we may have as members. So it's not unique to Iowa by any means. I mean, I think this is a problem that US Youth recognizes at the national level, is how do you create better opportunities for those other, 30, 40, 50% of kids that are playing soccer, that love the game, that just haven't joined an organized club or team. So I think, we're going to be more intentional about that. We're trying to figure out the best ways to get out there and do that. I just had a conversation with a member club the other day who's like, hey, we want to grow our club. We want to go get involved with what the YMCA is doing across the road. And a club member with a D license goes over to YMCA, volunteer coach, while he finds out at 6U they're playing 11v11 on a full-size field. So I think for us, a lot of times you kind of get caught up in what we're doing, and we don't realize that, even a parent coach with the basic license can probably go out and get involved in some of these different areas, and really provide a lot of education, development experience to other organizations that are just trying to get kids playing. And I think the more that we can support our member clubs to be the best clubs they can be, and to be stewards of the game kind of in their community and build those relationships. I mean, we just brought on Charles City a couple of years ago, and they work with the YMCA, and it's exciting to see these clubs develop and then influence kind of other sectors of the game within their community. And it's a little bit of effort can go a long way. So for us to be more intentional, more awareness of what's going out there, I think there's a lot of things that we can do to grow the game relatively quickly. And, one of the areas that I said before that I want us to focus more on is helping those clubs, build those bonds within their community, grow the game within their community. Ultimately, that's going to grow the game in the state. And hopefully we'll have more informal ways of just playing soccer across the state. So
I think it's all about the partnerships too, right? I remember going to Fairfield where Maharishi University is, back when we were at Drake, and they can levitate down there. And we did a camp, and 3 or 4 days driving. And it was probably an hour and 20 minutes or something from Des Moines, and you're on like county highways. But partnerships like through Drake, remember the Menace, doing some Menace stuff where you're driving like Monroe, Iowa. Well, I'm an Iowa guy, but had never heard of Monroe. So I think there's just for others as well, like there's partnerships out there that they can kind of contribute. Like you said, you guys can't do it by yourselves. You need some buy-in and some collaboration with groups that are all in it for the right reasons.
There are 99 counties. Can you imagine how many clubs you could possibly have?
That's one of our, that's like the 2099 goal, right, Ben, of having like a mini pitch in every county in the state. Like, it's way out there, not realistic, but that's the type of size Iowa has. And there's a ton of rural stuff that you don't know about. Like you said, that was it, Craig. Like you said, that there was 2 or 3 kids that are registered that are playing that nobody knows about.
Yeah. And that coming from like that Cedar Valley area, just driving through town, you'd see, certain school districts where there's 40, 50 kids playing soccer, and you've never seen one of those kids show up to one of your training sessions or, games, anything. So it's exciting to think about. I mean, as a state of Iowa, we need to do better, but it's something that is a huge topic across the country. And I'll be interested to see over the next couple of years, like how we invest, time and resources into doing better at that. And we know at the state level, we're not the ones that are going to go out there and provide that experience. Like, we're not providing that, like that experience this Saturday for those kids to come out and play. Our clubs are doing that regularly. So can we help our clubs be better at that and do that more often? And you know, a lot of what we're doing over the next couple of weeks is our clubs are telling us what they need to be better. And then we need to figure out how we support all clubs, and some clubs we have to support them differently than others. So,
So one thing that, I mean, you can't avoid, and it's no matter what a third party consultant says, you know, like the financial barrier to play the game it has to be part of it. And I listened recently, you know, to learn a little bit about the ECNL, and you know, like I used to work for the Development Academy for US Soccer, and I don't love the idea of you know, the more you pay, the better opportunities you get. And so how do you, but at the same time, like, you know, the more money you pay, you do get some sweet opportunities, and there's some really cool things out there. So like, how do you break that barrier down, or like what kinds of, and does that, again, that's not even stuff that like the third party, like if the third party tells you that, you're going to be like, yeah, thanks. Like we knew that. Like, tell us something that's going to like solve it for us. So like what kind of thing? I mean, I don't know. That one seems to be a really tricky
Craig,
one.
I'll let you solve this one.
Yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, do you feel like does that become one of your responsibilities, is to figure out how to help clubs reduce the cost somehow? Or
Yeah, I mean, bottom line is every kid needs to be able to play. Period. We've got to figure out a way to make sure that's the starting point, that programs like what's going on in Des Moines with Genesis exist, so that all kids have a chance to play soccer that want to play organized soccer. Obviously, you get to the point in this country where you have teams that travel every weekend for games, and that is going to be cost prohibitive to a lot of kids. In other countries, you know, some of those programs are 100% funded. You know, their soccer budgets for the, you know, development of players are astronomical in places like Germany and England. So some of those problems are solved in other countries, but we can't look to that model because we don't have that, you know, almost bottomless amount of money to kind of subsidize all clubs to make sure all kids have every opportunity at no cost. So I think we have to be creative. We have to bring opportunities to kids rather than always feeling like we have to send kids to opportunities too. You know, it's when you have to travel, when you believe you have to travel every weekend to play a high level game, you know, that's going to raise the cost. Whereas if we could create, you know, a bigger environment where there's, you know, competition near you that's quality enough, you know, obviously that significantly reduces the cost to play. So I mean, obviously there's no easy answer here. You know, this is one that's been debated throughout soccer communities. You know, the MLS clubs subsidize some teams. So there's some, you know, some of those kids some kids are able to have that opportunity, but we don't have that in Iowa right now. So it's finding corporate sponsors, it's finding people to, you know, to cover some of those costs. You know, I would love to do something where we could have, you know, have corporations essentially cover for every player that registers with us. We're able to reduce it by $1 or $5 or whatever that number is, because we're able to get corporations to essentially subsidize registration fees, which is a small thing, but it, you know, continues to pass that back to the club, you know, and reduce those costs.
so I mean, just from the stuff we've talked about, one of the things that occurs to me is like, the fact is we have 99 counties. So to drive from the northwest to a tip of the corner of the state to the southeast corner of the state, I mean, that's a 6-hour drive, right? You drive from Council Bluffs to Bettendorf, that's nearly 5 hours, right? So like that's the same as a lot of times these people are driving just to say, hey, well, I'm going to go play in Chicago, Omaha, Minnesota, whatever. So like that is one of the other like weird challenges of our state. It's just like kind of, it's huge, even though we're a small little place when it's all said and done.
yeah, I mean, we recognize for some of our top teams that is probably the best environment for them to develop. We see teams, you know, we support teams every year that go to regional championships and regional President's Cup. And the reality is, if they're not competing against, you know, some of these top teams week in and week out, it's kind of a shock when you get to regional championships and play those teams that are playing at that level regularly. But for the rest of our membership, and, you know, as a state association, we try to place as much emphasis on the recreational kids at the entry level. to kind of our competitive and select kids at the top level, where again, we need to help our clubs be the best they can be, because the primary experience of those kids and those parents is at the club level. And our programming, whether it's our leagues or our cups, it's kind of supplementary to what they're doing at the clubs. And we think we can offer a lot. And, you know, one of the things that we are doing with our league is trying to, we sat through like a diversity and inclusion training early last week, and it was very interesting, because, you know, from my perspective, we always talked about kind of equality and equalizing their voices, but you know, equity versus equality is very different. And that's where, you know, in meeting like with Sam at Genesis, it's like, it's not just trying to find local games. Like, some of his hurdles is, how do we get kids to training? Like, these kids need rides. I mean, it's opened our eyes to, you know, what we thought were some of the challenges versus the reality of what some of our clubs have to deal with. And in being at a club where, you know, I had to support maybe 1 or 2 kids that didn't have that access, we've got clubs out there where they have full teams, where, you know, they're having significant challenges just to get those kids to playing, you know, what we call formal sports. So I think there's, you know, we don't even know what some of those things are that we can do, but a lot of it comes down to partnerships and finding support, you know, whether it's financial or, you know, in some cases, just getting these guys like vehicles or buses. I mean, we had a team from Sioux City that I said last time, you know, they packed all their kids in the van to come down and play in 1 league game or 2 league games. It's interesting how far our clubs are willing to go to get these kids playing soccer. And we just have to do more to support that.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. It's a tricky thing to do. So I guess maybe the one thing that we would maybe leave it with is just, you know, we've touched on a few things that, you know, I think regardless of the conversation are important to talk about, but what kinds of issues do you maybe see being, or what other issues do you see being addressed through this process, or are you looking forward to address, or yeah, what have you?
Or what you don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
There's always that. I'll let you go first, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot, but at the end of the day, it's hard. I'm excited for a third party to listen to some of the challenges we have, because a lot of times in the last, you know, 5 or 6 weeks in meeting, you know, with a third party, they're like, you do what? I mean, we engage regularly with, you know, peers in other states. So people that are running leagues in Ohio or Wisconsin or, you know, other states outside. It's always interesting to talk about what they're doing. We all have similar challenges, but we also all have unique challenges. So I'm excited to hear what kind of feedback they receive, and then to see what they come back to the table with in regards to, maybe we can do this. Like, at the end of the day, we all know that there's a lot of areas to improve, but in regards to the league itself, we've got to find those things that everybody really supports, because anytime you adjust one of these priorities, you potentially have to give something else up. So we want to just better balance that out, and looking forward to seeing, you know, what types of products we can put out there that maybe are new. And, you know, we're also excited about just being able to think outside the box moving forward with, you know, unique competition formats, in order to open doors to getting new clubs involved. We're doing a lot of stuff down on the east side right now, where, you know, some of the clubs from across the river, I think state associations are typically willing to work together to try to do what's best for our membership. That's sometimes more difficult to manage. It's no different for Illinois, where, you know, their core is around that Chicago area, and then they've got Moline and these other communities down here that are kind of outliers, but they actually make a lot of sense to be playing, you know, with our teams in the Quad City area. So can we work with other organizations, with other leagues, with other products to try to do what's best for membership, and providing them kind of a unique solution within our, you know, our bigger products.
Yeah, I think, you know, Craig talked a lot about it, like what we can do differently, I think is really the question. But I think the other thing that, you know, we expect to come out of this process is a better understanding of the services we provide that are key to our existing services. So we know what's critical to our clubs. What are we, it's the classic, are we doing things that aren't really beneficial to clubs? Are we investing time in that? So we just talked about, opportunity to play. We have the Share the Love program, which is sponsored by Score Sports, and we're able to provide, items to clubs that need them so that they don't have to buy things like pennies or balls. They reduce the cost and get kids out playing.
We received that last year.
Yes. Kick It Forward was one of our
We're
recipients.
thankful.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that. So so we have that program. We assume that's well received. We provide really thorough risk management services, and some of those things are things we can't get away from. But every coach is background checked in this state. That coaches soccer, whether they're coaching 5-year-olds or 19-year-olds. Every coach has had safe sport training. To identify abuse and they become a mandatory reporter essentially, and they're able to identify the signs of abuse and report it and know the process.
Those things that we take for granted, Dan, just as a parent, my kid played basketball, wrestling, like there's none of that
Right.
that's required. So I think that's a good thing. We take as parents, we take advantage of a couple of those things.
Yeah, and I think and the other thing all of our coaches have is training on concussions and identifying that. But I think one of the things we do, and most people don't know, we put it on social media, but every Friday night we release a list of cleared coaches. So every parent in the state can go to that site. Essentially, it's updated every Friday, and say, oh, look, my coach's name isn't on there. We can't be at every game to police it. So we rely on others to make sure those coaches are undergoing the proper risk management protocols. But we try to make that very public, again, because safety is important. So, those are the types of things we know we're doing. We do the same thing with referees, making sure all the referees have gone through the proper risk management protocols. So understanding what we do that's of value to the clubs is really important, and how to tell that story a little bit better. I don't know that all parents know how extensive it is to become a coach. It's almost cumbersome and prohibitive in times, but we think it's really important to make sure, I've got 2 kids, and when I send my kids out there to practice that I'm not at, I want to make sure they're in a pretty safe environment. So while we're going to learn things we could do better, I think we're also going to learn what it is we're doing that has a lot of value. So we know that we need to continue to invest, or even increase our time and monetary investments in those services.
Cool. Well, anything else you want to touch on while we're here today, or we're definitely going to come back once the process has completed itself.
Yeah, I think once we get through this over the next couple of months, we're happy to come back over the summer probably. We don't know when it'll be done, and I've said, my phrase on this whole time is, we're going to let the process drive the timeline, not the other way around. We want to make sure we get it right, which means if it takes 6 months, it takes 6 months. If it takes 2 months, it takes 2 months. We haven't set any artificial deadlines at all. It is just, let's work the process.
You just did somewhere between 2 and 6 months.
Well, if it takes 12 months, it takes 12 months. If it takes 12 months, then we have other issues. but that's just it. So, once we have that done, though, I think kind of sharing what we've learned, obviously, these are going to be public because there'll be changes made. But coming back here and it's a good opportunity to kind of reach out to people and answer the what's and the whys of the decisions that were made and the why behind it, and kind of what we heard, and talk about, maybe in the league there is no promotion relegation. We want to talk about why we decided not to do that, or maybe there is, and we talk about why we did, and kind of the feedback we get from clubs mixed in with player development principles and that type of stuff. So yeah, we'd be excited to come back and over the summer and do it either one or a series. It depends on kind of what we need to talk about, and continuing that conversation as we continue to evolve soccer in Iowa, and the landscape changes, but our goal is to make it better for kids in Iowa. So
Right on. Well, thanks for coming in today, guys.
Thank you.
thanks for the time.
It's good chat. I really enjoyed that. Super informative. What else can I say?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a tease now as we wait and figure out what
Anxiously wait.
yeah, kind of see what the consultant group comes back with, and kind of the process, what Iowa Soccer does with that information.
Yeah, and I would say that if you are just a listener and you have any questions or thoughts, and you do want to slide into our DMs, like we legitimately love that. So send us stuff, and I think honestly we'll get it right to the source. And I think that you may find your question being, if it's a good one, maybe being asked to all the clubs throughout the state of Iowa and to the consultant themselves.
Yeah, I mean, this series about youth soccer definitely has been for us most feedback we've ever gotten, and most listens and whatnot. So keep doing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, right on. And if you're enjoying what we're doing, maybe join the supporters club. You can join it for $20 up front, and you get all the swag that you could want. But we've also had people that have started rocking the $3 a month donation, which obviously gets you a little bit further, but is also like, what is that? $3 a month? Like that's like one Starbucks. So it's like a basic black coffee from Starbucks. Yeah, maybe a shot of espresso at Starbucks. So consider maybe donating that our way, and then don't forget about joining us tomorrow, Saturday, April 17th at the mini pitch. Anybody that shows up and wants to donate, or just shows up and wants to party, we're gonna go to the loft afterwards, and got the rooftop. Hopefully it'll be nice and warm. Should be fun. We'll bundle up.
Yeah.
I'll put my beer sweater on.
There you go.
All right. So we'll see you guys Saturday.